There are knives made for hunters, and there are blades born for history. This is no ordinary steel, but rather 3 nines fine, silver, and gilded with gold. It wasn't forged in anonymity or brought in haste, but masterfully crafted by the Spectre's mint. This is a replica of the knife handed to a man whose very life carved itself into the bedrock of American legend to the point of a mountain bearing his face. A man who rode with the Rough Riders through the smoke of San Juan Hill, who stared down death not with arrogance but with purpose. A man who breathed in the air of the untamed wind of the Badlands and exhaled laws that shaped a nation. That man was Theodore Roosevelt, and the knife, as you see right here, was a tribute, a token of respect from a fellow believer in strength, honor, and wilderness, crafted with care, etched with legacy. It is easy to forget that some men are not carved from ordinary clay, but from something a bit harder, wilder, and in this case, sharper. We will get to this amazing knife shortly, but as always, if we do not know the inspiration for the beauty of this knife, we do not truly know how to weigh its value. So I'll give you a small view into my favorite president's life. He was born sickly, asthmatic, nearsighted, and so frail his doctors begged him to take it easy. Instead, he climbed mountains, he rode horseback, he boxed with Navy officers and boxing legends at the White House while demanding they not pull their punches. He defied racial lines by inviting the first African-American guest to the White House in Booker T. Washington, upsetting the Democratic South. He fought in the Spanish-American War in 1898, and he's best known for his role as Lieutenant Colonel of the Rough Riders, a volunteer cavalry unit during the Battle of San Juan Hill. He played a role in planning the naval war against Spain while serving as Assistant Secretary of the Navy. He hunted grizzlies and charged into battles with bullets screaming past his hat. He even gave a speech with an assassin's bullet buried in his chest, where he spoke for an additional 90 minutes before letting a doctor examine him. He tried to fight in World War I at old age but was denied, and yet with all of the success in conflict, Roosevelt wanted peace and actually won a Nobel Peace Prize for ending a war between Imperial Japan and Russia. Now that is not ordinary. To some, a brash president, to others, a reformer, to all, a force of nature in glasses so large that he was carved into the side of a mountain dedicated to those who carved a path in taming of a young nation. But to a longtime friend, James W. Girard, a New York Supreme Court judge and the eventual American ambassador to Germany during World War I, Roosevelt was more than a politician. He was an ideal. A man who, when faced with corruption, cowardice, or conquest, did not blink. Girard once said Roosevelt was the embodiment of the American spirit. So much so that when the Great War ended and Roosevelt refused to gloat, refused to rest, and refused to let bitterness rule the day, Girard sent him a knife, this knife. Not necessarily just a weapon, but also a work of art, filigreed and silver-hilted, with Roosevelt's initials etched onto its bone handle, a gift to a man who had cut his own path through life with sharp wit, sharper words, and if needed, sharper steel. Now, the records don't say what Roosevelt did with this knife, but knowing him, he could have used it to open a letter from his youngest son, Quentin, written before he died in the skies over France, or to whittle the end of a walking stick for another trek through the Dakota Badlands or across the African savanna, or maybe to cut the red tape binding the hands of progress. He lived 60 years in a world most men wouldn't dare spend 6. A cowboy, a colonel, a president, a rough rider whose greatest conquest was fear itself. And we were blessed by the Spectre's Mint, who sent us this knife, a replica, once again presented as a gift by Justice James W. Girard, a friend of Roosevelt, commissioned the knife to be presented to him as a gift for his African hunting trip. As you can see, this was a masterpiece of jeweler's workmanship, with a hilt crafted in gold and platinum and ornamented with jewels. The knife featured an eagle head handle with red garnet eyes, intricate forest scene, and the U.S. arms with Roosevelt's initials. Roosevelt carried and likely used this knife during his Smithsonian Roosevelt African expedition in 1909. The knife we know was passed down through the Roosevelt family over 100 years, and in 2016, the knife was put up for auction and sold for a record-breaking $414,000. This knife in my hand can be yours for much, much less than that, as I have a coupon code to save you on this elite piece of history. But before we go any further, we need to see where it sits on our 60-point scale so that you know if it's right for your collection. As always is the case from the Spectre's Mint, this coin comes expertly packaged and presented. A beautiful outer box in classic white with the name of the item right here. The inner box, if we open it up, look at that. It is a fantastic prelude to our Symphony of Silver with the classic etch-style image and name, as well as the American flag and the Spectre's Mint logo. Upon opening our box, we have a layer of protective foam, which, once removed, leads us to our beautiful historic scene of Roosevelt in the areas of his leisure as President, Hunter, Cavalry, and Rough Rider. Just gorgeous. The American flag center focus with the cavalry sabers, showing that he was in the 1st United States Volunteer Cavalry. Just north of the flag, we see the exhibition label, which gives you context to our piece. We have a certificate of authenticity and mintage stating that this number is 508 out of 1909. A significant number as it marks the end of his presidency in 1909 and the start of his next chapter, African Safaris. More on also the importance of 508, which is the number of which this coin is registered. Now for the main course. I'm going to assume that this is the obverse, as the knife was oriented this way in the packaging, though both sides are beautiful, and I would not be shocked if it were the other way. Let's start with the blade. Being 2 ounces of silver, this knife is around 6 inches in length, which is about half the size of the original, which is most appropriate for this coin. There is not a honed edge, which I'm grateful for, because if it were, I would be tempted to find a use for it. As we travel to the hilt, right here, I'll zoom in so you can see it. As you can see, right here on this hilt, we are met with a pair of bear heads, beautifully crafted. It seems that we are then met by some tree branches, right here, interweaving, leading us to this American eagle outstretched among the stars, as you can see right there. Just gorgeous. Below we have the ornamented approach to the letters TR right there, standing of course for Theodore Roosevelt, all leading you to the gilded pommel of an eagle head, as you can see. Originally, that eye would have been garnet. Here, it is enameled red. Beautiful piece. Just gorgeous. The ornateness of the handle is balanced with the smoothness of the blade, and this is perfection personified in precious metal, and therefore scores a 10. When we move to the reverse, which is this side, we will start with the handle, as the eagle is basically a reverse of what we had on the obverse. We are met with 2 figures now, right here, in the trees. I believe this to be frontiersmen Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett, as Roosevelt admired both of these so much that he created the Boone and Crockett Club to promote conservation. Crockett was also a volunteer, just like Roosevelt, who fought and died at the Alamo, which, interestingly enough, is the same area where Roosevelt would train for his conquest in the Spanish-American War. I love how the trees wrap around from one side of the coin to the other, and the hilt right here with the bears mirrors the obverse as well. Now here's where things get cool. Just north of all that, we see some beautiful work here on the blade. We see the Spectre's Mint, followed by the purity, value, year, and seal of the issuing nation right there, which in this case is Samoa. Now look at the blade. If we look closely, you will see in ornate fashion the words presented to Theodore Roosevelt by his friend James W. Gerard, just like on the original. This coin, in all respects, is at the crossroads of history, art, and bullion, and scores a 10. Mintage is where we go next, and this is where the story gets even cooler. As noted, there is a mintage of 1909 on this coin, which signifies his transition from public life as president to private life as he started to go on safaris. What is even cool is I have number 508, as you can see right here. 508 is actually significant to Roosevelt as he enacted Proclamation 508 in 1903. Theodore Roosevelt, the president, issued a proclamation designating Thursday, November 26th as a day of general thanksgiving. The proclamation urged people to cease from their usual occupations and offer thanks for the blessings that they had received, including peace and prosperity. The proclamation also emphasized the responsibility that came with these blessings, urging citizens to show they were worthy of them through righteous and just actions. This is the cherry on top, and it scores a 10 for having an extremely low mintage. Now for cultural significance. Now let's think. Samoa and the Pacific Islands? There could not be a strong significance between Samoa and Roosevelt, right? Well, I thought the same thing until I remembered he was a giant in the Navy. And sure enough, there is a fairly significant link. You see, in 1899, this was Roosevelt's era of expansion. While he was not yet president, he was governor of New York and thus had strong support in the U.S. expansion in naval power. During this time, the Tripartite Convention of 1899 was signed, and the United States, Great Britain, and Germany officially partitioning the Samoan Islands. Germany took control of Western Islands, which is modern-day Samoa. The United States would receive the Eastern Islands, which was modern-day American Samoa, and Britain withdrew in exchange for other territories in the Pacific. Although Roosevelt did not engineer this agreement, the results aligned with his worldview that U.S. should have a firm, growing presence in the Pacific. There comes item number 2. Which would be Roosevelt's naval strategy in American Samoa. Roosevelt believed strongly in naval power as a cornerstone of American influence, a theme he developed in his book, The Naval War of 1812, and enacted as Assistant Secretary of the Navy. American Samoa, particularly the harbor at Pago Pago, became vital coaling and naval station for expanding U.S. Navy in the Pacific. Roosevelt later emphasized and expanded America's strategic Pacific presence, especially with the Great White Fleet from 1907 to 1909. Though the fleet didn't dock in Samoa, it demonstrated U.S. naval might in the region and reinforced the importance of bases like American Samoa. As president, Roosevelt supported the U.S. presence in American Samoa and ensured it remained under naval administration, believing that territories like it were stepping stones to greater global influence. He helped uphold and legitimize U.S. claim to Eastern Samoa, reinforcing the Monroe Doctrine in the Pacific. Roosevelt's belief in civilizing missions often extended to non-contiguous U.S. territories, where he viewed the American governance as beneficial even if imposed. Roosevelt's brand of big stick diplomacy and belief in American exceptionalism had a direct impact on how the U.S. approached small Pacific territories. He viewed regions like Samoa, Guam, Hawaii, and the Philippines as necessary for maintaining sea power and commercial reach. While controversial today, Roosevelt saw this as a benevolent exercise of muscular diplomacy. These efforts obviously are most impact to American Samoa and not to the independent Samoa under the Commonwealth, but without his involvement and partnership, these islands could have been lost during either of the world wars. His implementation of harbor security and strategy helped create the infrastructure to survive both world wars and the Pacific theater. I therefore think there is a strong link to Mr. Theodore Roosevelt and Samoa, so I do score it an 8. Collectibility is next, and we have one of the most famous characters in American history who also happened to be president. We have an extremely low mintage, and we have a very unique presentation right here in the highest refined quality. We have a knife which, combined with solid Americana, is always welcome. This is at the height of collectibility, recognizing, of course, that America is the biggest consumer market in the world. It therefore scores a 10. Our last area is uniqueness. Have you ever seen anything quite like this? Just gorgeous. I've not, and I assume that you haven't either. This is a world-class piece of art that I think could sit in a museum in this form. It is so hyper-accurate in its form that I think any American display would love one. I cannot score it less than a 10, bringing it to our final thoughts and score. This amazing piece of Americana charges across the line at an elite and almost perfect 58 out of 60, meaning it is not just elite, it is world-class, and a coin fit for every collection of Americans, history buffs, outdoorsmen, and nature enthusiasts. And, well, really anyone with a pulse. I've been blessed to review it and hope that you remember that if you like one, please use my coupon code COC20 and save some money on yours. And until next time, please remember to stay classy and current with the culture of currency.